This is Radio.co.
Hi, it's James, founder of Radio.co. Welcome along to this video about the DBX286S, which you can see in front of you now. Now, this is a microphone preamp and processor, and we've been using it a lot at Radio.co for the past couple of years. Been very happy with the results, so I thought I'd do a video all about it and explain some of its features. Now, the big question is, why use a microphone processor? Well, it gives your voice more kind of punch, more clarity. It can add warmth to your voice, and it can generally make your voice sound more present on the radio, which is a really important thing when you're competing against other radio stations. Furthermore, it can also help reduce things like background noise and sibilance, and when I say that, it's the S's at the end of sentences. And also, you can use it to generally, as I say, enhance your voice, give you more punch on air. So what I want to do in this video is just run through the options and talk a bit about how to set them. Firstly, the gain. This is basically the overall volume or amplification of your mic, and it should be set to a level where when you're speaking, you're not sort of going into the clipping, the red light, but the two green lights should be on most of the time. And if they aren't, it's too low, and if you're hitting the red light, you definitely don't want to be doing that. It's a signal that your setting is too high. The 48-volt phantom power switch should be enabled for most condenser microphones, including all of the ones that we recommend for Radio.co customers, such as the Behringer B1, the Blue Spark, and also Neumann TLM 103s that we use here in the studio at Radio.co. Now, the 80Hz cut-out switch can help in some circumstances to reduce some background noise, particularly low hums or rumbles or kind of like wind perhaps. But the thing is, if you enable this setting, it will also reduce the dynamic range of your voice, so we tend to leave that off most of the time, but there are circumstances in which you might want to use it. Next up, the process bypass switch. This will actually disable any of the settings that we're going to be talking about after this. You probably want to leave this disabled most of the time, but it can be really interesting to see what it sounds like without the processing and with the processing. So here is an example with the processor switched on. As you can hear, the past few sentences, the things I've been reading and telling you about, have been going through this processor. Now here is an example with the processor switched off. You can hear a big difference versus what I was just saying before. Now let's switch it back on again. My voice is now much clearer. It's got a bit of presence added to it. And it's just overall, you can see what a big difference that it makes. I think this illustrates perfectly why this processor is a great addition to your studio. Let's try that again. So now I've switched the processor off. As you can see, I sound okay. Haven't got as much presence though as when the processor was enabled. My voice sounds the same, it's not completely changing my voice, and you can't expect a unit like this to change your voice completely, but you can see how it can add real oomph and pizzazz to your voice. So now let's move on to more exciting settings that will make a real difference to your voice that has just been demonstrated. Firstly, the compressor. Now this basically adds more punch and pizzazz to what you're saying, and it kind of crunches down or compresses your voice down so it's all at one level. Now, don't go crazy here because you'll end up sounding a bit weird. We recommend setting drive to around 3, and we also recommending setting density to around 3 as well. But you can tweak these settings to develop a sound that's really good for your station and your style of voice, etc. So the de-esser helps to remove S's from speech. This is known as sibilance. And we normally set this to around 4K, and then we set the threshold between 1 and 2. It really depends on your voice. Quite often the best way to set this is to sit there and just say S and adjust it until you're happy with the result. Adjust the frequency to a frequency which works with your voice. Alright, so the enhancer is really the best part of the box in my opinion. And this is what gives you that radio sound that people are always looking for. What it does is it can enhance the highs and the lows of your voice. So it takes the sounds that are already coming out of your mouth and just kind of adds a bit more oomph to them. Now it's important to note that you don't need to go too crazy with these settings. If you do, you run the risk of just sounding a bit strange, to be honest. We try to stick between 2 and 3 on both of these settings, I guess the thing is, little goes a long way. Don't go crazy with these settings. If you've got a low voice, you probably don't need to add any more bass. If you've got a very high voice, you don't need to add much more highs to it. So, find some settings that really work for you and your voice. The expander and gate will basically act like a switch. If you're not talking directly into the mic, it will disable it. So this is great to cut down on background noise, and we suggest setting the ratio to 1:1. And then start the threshold at 0 in perfect silence. With your headphones on, you'll hear background noise. You'll notice then as you turn the knob up, the background noise will eventually cut away. And this is the right setting for the expander and gate. Finally, the output should be set to 0. You can adjust this if needed to suit the equipment that you're using, like a mixing desk or a USB sound card, such as the Scarlett 2i2, and you just need to make sure that the equipment isn't going into the red section on the meter. You need to keep your eyes on those meters at all times, whatever device or whatever part of the system it is, and make sure that you're not going into red, because that will ultimately just cause clipping and cause problems for your listeners.
Powering stations around the world.